Hello, everyone, and welcome to the In the Saddle podcast. My name is Chris Loader, and I am joined by Katie Midwinter as we'll be previewing the ITV action this weekend at Doncaster, Newbury, and Bangor on D. Of course, it's going to be the return of the turf action on the flat at Doncaster. Always a tricky punting card, but we'll do our best to hopefully find you some winners. Katie, are we looking forward to the return of the flat now?
Yeah, I actually am really. I enjoyed the card at the Curragh on Monday. Some of my old favourites were back out. Casanova had a bit of luck in the main race of the day there as well, was brilliant. Aidan O'Brien's back as well, which is always good. It's a bit weird after Cheltenham. You kind of feel some Cheltenham blues. I was there last week and then up at Uttoxeter on Saturday. So it was all go, and now it feels a bit of a lull after it. But thankfully, we had the Curragh to pick us right back up quickly, and now we've got the Lincolnshire to look forward to. And yeah, there's a lot to look forward to at this time because we've got still some of the big jumps meetings going on. We've got Fairy House soon, and then it'll be Aintree, of course, Punchestown. But then kind of feeling that I'm really looking forward to the Guineas now as well, and trying to figure out which horses are going to go for which classics. It was nice to see the Ballydoyle stable visit that the media had the other day and see all the pictures from there. Really looking forward to City of Troy and of course Lang Lang. So now I'm excited for it. But yeah, it's a shame that Cheltenham's done and dusted now, but still a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I often think this is probably one of the best times of the year when it comes to racing. Obviously, we've got as you say, some of the big festivals still to come, the likes of Aintree, Punchestown, Ayr as well, the Irish Grand National at Fairy House. So lots of good racing still to come. And also as well, we'll be having the flat coming up as well. We'll be getting the trials like the Craven, and then before you know it, we'll be onto the Guineas. So yeah, very busy time of year for racing. And the first race we're going to look at then is going to be the 120 at Doncaster. It's the William Hill Doncaster Mile Stakes. It's a listed race, over a mile, surprise, surprise. And the field looks like this. Knight is your favourite at 11-4. We've then got Sharon at 3-1. Astral Bow, last year's winner at 5-1. Holloway Boy at 5s as well. Gray's Monument 12s, along with Paddock Shaka. And Dashing Roger is the outsider at 50-1. Katie, how are we seeing this one?
I can't say I've had a really strong fancy in this race. I'd probably side with Knight. I have to forgive his last run at Newmarket where he stopped quite quickly. But he had 2 seconds before then to Angel Blue and Chindit respectively. I think it's decent form, and he beat Sharon in the Celebration Mile, although Sharon did have excuses on that day. But I think Knight will enjoy the conditions here on the softer side, so I'd probably go for him. But I can see a scenario in which Sharon will be able to reverse that form, and I wouldn't completely rule out a return to form for Holloway Boy either. So not a race that I'll be getting too involved in.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a trappy race, isn't it? You can make a case for at least a few in here. I was coming down on the side of Sharon for Roger Varian. I just think some of his form last season reads pretty well. I know you say Knight did get the better of him, but I quite liked a lot of Sharon's runs last season. He was always a horse that was maybe in between trips, 7 furlongs, a mile, but he does go quite well fresh. He doesn't mind a bit of soft ground as well. He ran some good races last year. He was behind Paddington a couple of times, 3rd in the St James's Palace, 4th in the Irish Guineas. That's pretty good form. He's officially the best horse on ratings as well for mark of 113. And it's interesting to see Sylvester de Souza back in the saddle. I think he had a few rides last week. So yes, good to see him back from Hong Kong, and I think he'll have a good chance here with Sharon. But like I say, it is a little bit trappy, and you can make a case for quite a few. So that's our thoughts then on the Doncaster Mile Stakes. We're now going to move on to the William Hill EBF Brocklesbury Stakes. It's the 150, and good luck to try and find the winner here. This is a minefield. We've got a full field of unraced 2-year-olds, no form to go on, so very tricky. But Katie, I know you quite like these races, looking at the pedigrees and that. Is there anything that caught your eye?
I do quite like a race like this. I might have to delve a bit further into the pedigrees before Saturday and try to work out which one of these is going to enjoy the conditions the most. But I'll mainly just be looking forward to seeing them in the paddock pre-race, seeing what they look like and how they're moving, and if anything takes my fancy from there. I will be interested to see how Dukes of Hathor gets on, as he's one of the first crop of foals from Hathor, who I just loved. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on with his first crop. So I'll be hoping that he runs a big race. But not sure at the moment. As you say, it's a bit of a minefield. I suppose watching the market a bit as well. But I really enjoy this kind of race as a watching brief, just to see which horse catches my eye and one that I can follow for the rest of the season. So I'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely is one to look at. This race sometimes can be a bit hit and miss on how good a horse it will produce. I remember Persian Force won this race when he was the subject of a bit of a gamble, and that's probably why the Ammo Race and Mystical Elegance is currently the favourite at 5-2. The one I did quite like on pedigree was Indication Ember for Grant Chewer. I thought it was quite interesting, this one being by Mason. Mason, his progeny often go on soft ground, and they can sometimes win first time out as well. And if you actually look at her entries, she's actually entered in the Super Sprint Stakes already. Quite a few horses will be entered in that race, but I think that's quite good that she's entered in there, and they clearly think she's been working well at home. I think Nick Bradley was on Sky Sports Racing earlier in the week, and they said they quite like this filly, so I think she's interesting. The connections tend to do well with 2-year-olds, like to get a few out early.
Do you remember the horse that I liked, the filly in these colours last year? I think for Grant Chewer as well. Was it Bellarici?
Oh, it could have been. It feels like a long time ago.
They seem to have, nice 2-year-old fillies. I really like Bellarici, so she could be one to watch.
Yeah, Indication Ember, always a shrewd bunch, the Nick Bradley people, and be interesting to see if any market sport comes to her. She's currently 11-2 at the time recording, so interesting to see how the market revolves around her. We're now going to move on to the 225, which is the William Hill Epic Boost Spring Mile Handicap, kind of the consolation race, it has to be said, for the Lincoln. Very competitive field here, 18 runners. Titian is your favourite at 13-2. We then got Harswell Duke next in, who I think won this race last year at 7-1. Thunder Roar at 8, Helter Skelter 9s, Arthur's Realm 10s, along with Look Back Smiling. Bigger RS. Katie, good luck trying to find the winner here. You could have a few darts and you probably couldn't get anywhere near it, could you?
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one. I think you can make a case for a fair few of these towards the head of the market. It's an open race, so definitely a race with an each way feel to it. There's a couple of these, the two favourites I'm seeing at the moment, actually. I think they finished 1-2 in the race last year, so you'd expect them to be able to put in a bold bid once again, Harswell Duke and Titian. But the one that I've been going more towards, and the one that I'm leaning towards, is Maison for Alice Haynes. Christian Howard's claiming £3 aboard. He's running off a mark of 77, but he has that £3 off. And he finished third in this race off 75 last year at 20-1. I just think of the ones that have the proven form in the race, he's the one that's being overlooked. So I think Maison at a big price could maybe sneak into the frame. I think he's around 16-1. And although I'm looking at all of the other horses that are shorter than him, the one I keep coming back to is Maison. So I'd probably be siding with him. He's a gentleman, is a horse I really like, and he's a consistent horse too, but I think the ground's going to be against him. He's been a non-runner before on account of unsuitable ground on heavy at Chester last season notably, and I just think it'll be too soft for him. But Mason should really enjoy the conditions. And as I said, he was third in it last year, so why can't he go close again?
Yeah, he's only £2 higher this time around, so you'd like to think he'd have definitely a squeak each way, and 16-1 might not be a bad price about him. I'm going to go with Horsadar here. He always seems to run quite well at Doncaster. Even though he's yet to win at the track, he's had some good efforts in the past, including a third in the Lincoln a couple of years ago behind Hahiki of the Gosdens, who was he was actually running off a £20 higher mark then. It's fair to say that he's not up to the standard of where he was a couple of years ago, but it wouldn't take a big performance to get back to somewhere even a few pounds higher than his mark to be competitive in this. He's 20-1, often runs his race, doesn't mind a bit of soft ground, And I could see him running well. He's running about 20-1, but you can make a case for quite a few in here and probably not even get close to the bullseye. So, very tricky race. But that was our thoughts then on the 225. We're now going to move on to the 3 o'clock, which is the William Hill Camage Trophy Stakes. It's a listed race, only 7 runners, but again, another trappy little race. Baradage, your favourite, 5-2. We've then got Marshman in at 7-2, along with Horacio. Montasib 5-1, Sophia Starlight 11s, A Day in Devon 16s, and Glorious Angel the outsider at 100-1. Katie, there's a few interesting horses in here. Marshman is the classiest horse, you have to say, in the race, but the likes of Horatio, Baradar, Montasib, they're kind of the handicappers that are worth a shot in this kind of race. Which way are you going with here?
I'm going with Horatio for Charlie Hills. I really like this horse, and he didn't really get his day in the sun towards the second half of last season because he promised plenty. He went off as favourite or joint favourite in 3 big handicaps, Ascot, Goodwood and Ayr, but he just failed to deliver. Now, the ground went against him massively at Goodwood. If you remember, there was such that deluge of rain. I remember being in Galway at the time and watching it, and you could barely see anything because the weather was so bad. And I think any horse that ran in that, you can forgive them for underperforming, and Horatio definitely did. He went off 100-30 and he finished well down the field. But I think he deserves another chance because I don't think that he dislikes soft ground. I just think that the ground on that day was just near impossible to actually perform on. And didn't they abandon the card after that race? So the Stewards Cup at Glorious Goodwood. So I think he can definitely be forgiven for it. Wasn't very good at Ayr in his next reappearance, but again, I just feel like he's had some excuses. I think he's worth sticking with. He's down to a mark of 100 now. I just think he's potentially a bit better than that because they clearly did fancy him off a higher mark in the handicaps when he's failed to deliver. I think this smaller field's going to suit him better. He had 2 wins at the early part of last season at Newmarket and Ascot in a smaller field, and one of those was on soft ground at Ascot. I just think this is going to be a test that's going to suit him more than his previous 3 races. I think he will go well. I think he'll handle conditions. So he's the selection for me.
Okay, Horatio it is for Katie. Yeah, typical Charlie Hills sprinter. He could be the improving kind of type. The likes of Cardham is a horse that springs to mind. Came from handicaps, and he did really well for Charlie Hills as he's got older with age. So he could maybe fit the same kind of profile. I am just going to go with Marshman here. He never really captured the heights of what we thought he was going to do as a juvenile. He put in some really good performances as a juvenile. He came second in a gimcrack behind Noble Style, and he was kind of a bit of a talking horse going into last year. He won in France on debut on soft ground at Chantilly, but he never quite delivered on the heights. He did finish second in a Group 2, but he just was a little bit disappointing. We haven't seen him for a little while. This is his first run because his last run was in the summer of last year. But I do think he's interested now coming here. The connections haven't gelded him, so they still think maybe he could make a sire one day. And I just think this soft ground, first time out fresh, could be the time to catch him. He won first time out, like I say, last year on soft ground at Chantilly. I think there's a bit more improvement to come. They're putting a first time tongue tie on, which is interesting, and if that can just help him with his breathing, I do think he's a horse that could go on to bigger and better things if you can just rule out last season for him, because I know Connections did think he was going to go right to the very top. So this is a good place to see where he's going to be racing this season. Is he going to be better than listed, or is he going to probably find the grade a little bit too hot? We'll have to see, but I am just going to side with Marshman. We're now going to move on to the Lincoln, the feature race of the day at Doncaster. The 3:35, Libertine Lane is your favourite 4-1. We've then got a Wall at 11-2 along with Chazamy, Latham's 10s, Johann's 12s along with the Gatekeeper, Blues Emperor 14s along with last year's winner Migration. Bigger are the rest. Katie, again, this is a very hard race to try and find the winner of. Did you have a few on your shortlist?
Yeah, I usually like to find a horse at a very big price and hope that it might represent some each way value. But in this race, I'm actually looking towards the head of the market. And Liberty Lane is the one that I most like the look of. Course and distance winner. I was a big fan of this horse last season. And I think the ground is going to suit him. He's got plenty of class. Could be off a decent mark, off 102. I think he's potentially better than that. So I think he could run a big race. 4-1 favourite. Short enough, I suppose, in a race of this nature. 22 runners could get into plenty of traffic problems, but I think the high draw will probably help him as well. And I'd say he's got an excellent chance if everything goes smoothly for him. The other one that I like is Chazame. We saw him winning the Irish Lincolnshire on Saturday. It's be a quick turnaround. It's quite a bold move from Fozzie Stack, but I think he's got a great chance on form. He's good. He's a consistent horse. He's used to running in these big fields, and he pulled clear of the rest of them on Monday. He looked to have more in hand as well. I think he's carrying a £5 penalty, but I think it will still be reasonable that he can run well off that mark. So I think he's going to have a good chance of doing the Lincoln double.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting horse. Quick turnaround, obviously, but we've seen it before. And yeah, Chazame, an interesting raider there for Fozzie Stack with Chazame. I was kind of on the same wave as you with Liberty Lane. Yes, he's 4-1, but it's clear to see why 4-year-olds have a really good record in this race. I think, in fact, actually, it was only up to a couple of years ago that 5 4-year-olds in a row have won the race. So he's got that profile of potentially being a group horse in the handicap. Previous course and distance winner, goes well fresh, likes some mud, so ticks plenty of boxes. So yeah, I think he's got a very good chance. Won at a big price. I'll give a mention to. Probably not good enough to win, but maybe could run well each way. Is a horse called Revage. He's 40-1. He's a horse that last season just seemed to be getting better. He was a stalwart in loads of big handicaps. Ran well, won twice, the likes of Ayr and also as well at Chester. He ran in the race last year at Doncaster when he finished 9th. Now, I know he was beaten 7 lengths by Migration and he was off a £5 high mark, but I just think he's a horse that tends to go well this time of year and he's suited by this kind of race. And I don't think this year the race is that deep. I think the ones at the top end of the market are the obvious ones, and I do expect them to be running out, but I think there's a load of horses in here that have clearly shown their best. Revage, like I say, obviously is a horse that we do know plenty about, but last season he arguably had probably the season of his life, and Richard Spencer's team have been going quite well of late as well. They're operating at a 60% strike rate. 3 winners from their last 5 runners. I just thought a big old price, 40-1, with extra places, probably get 6, 7, maybe 8 places on the race. He could go well. So yeah, he's one I'd just maybe have a small saver on each way because I wouldn't be at all see him run a big race. So that's our thoughts then on the Lincoln. We're now moving over to some familiar territory now, over to the jumps game, where we're going to go to the 210 at Newbury for the bet and play on racing with Bet Victor Novices Handicap Hurdle. 9 runners, but an interesting little race. Into the Park is your favourite, 11-4. We've then got Spirits Bay going for the hat-trick at 5-1. ID Wood 13-2. Cartoon and Co at 9-1. 135 not out at 10s, along with Pretending, and Bigger Are the Rest. Katie, this is a little bit again of a tricky little race. A few horses coming in here with some good form. How did you see it?
I really fancy Into the Park. He's been in for a 3rd successive win. I think he can defy a £6 rise by continuing his form. He fell in when he was in 3rd position in his only point-to-point, which was won by the champion bumper winner Jasmine DeBow of Willie Mullins. Now he's by Walk in the Park. He's out of Lassa Serene, who was a useful mare. So I really think Into the Park is going to be one to follow. He's made an impressive start to his career so far over jumps, and I think he can continue that progression. I think there's a lot more to come from him. So off a mark of 126, carrying a top weight of 12 stone, I can see him winning this, and I can see him going off a much higher mark in future. So I think he's got a bright future ahead. I think he's definitely one to keep on side and one for the tracker.
Okay, Katie's quite keen on the chances of Into the Park. I thought Idy Wood was worth a go here. I just think he's been crying out for the step up in trip. He's a horse that's been campaigned largely over 2 miles this season, but when he did try this trip, he did win at Plumpton, and I thought the way he rallied last time out when he finished third at Kempton suggested that, like I say, this step up in trip should see him in a good light. He's been really consistent this season, running in some good races. He did get turned over at 1-6 at Hexham, but that was behind Cracking Rhapsody, who actually has won the Moor Battle this season. So I don't think it was necessarily a bad race. And like I say, a lot of his form, if you look at the likes of Third Behind, Look Away and that, it's pretty good form. And I think, on this galloping track, I think the long straight will really suit him. He's won at the course before in a bumper. So, I think he could definitely go well. He's running about 13, so I could see him going close each way. So Idy Wood, I think the step up in trip could just bring a little bit more improvement out in him. We're now going to move over to the 240 at Newbury for the Get Best Odds Guaranteed at Bet Victor Handicap Chase. 7 runners here. Heltenham is your favourite at 2-1. We've then got Eton Collina at 5s. Gunsight Ridge at 11-2. Solo 7s. Galahad Quest 10s along with Psycho, and Gustavin is the outsider at 11-1. Katie, Heltenham seems to be in the form of his life. He's had a couple of good runs at the likes of Newbury and Kempton, up £6. Do we think he's the most likely winner here?
I think he's probably the deserving favourite, especially considering the form that the Skeletons are in at the moment. I can't say I had a really strong fancy in the race, though. The one I'd be most interested in at the prices, maybe from an each way angle, is probably Solo. Freddie Gingell is claiming £5 aboard, so it's, he doesn't have as much of a burden of 12 stone as he would have, and Freddie Gingell is more than capable claiming jockey. This horse was a Grade 2 winner last year in his novice season, beating That's Alright Gino, Boot Hill. They went on to run very well then, and especially That's Alright Gino, who had been enjoying an incredible year last year. I think he's probably the one that I'd be siding with if I was pushed, but to be honest, it's not really a race that I'm likely to get too involved in, so I'll leave this one to you, Chris.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly strong on anything either. I did think Heltenham had a really good chance. Won here, obviously, over the course and distance earlier this month. Is off a £6 higher mark, but I just like the way he did it last time out. If the ground was to get a little bit testing, that wouldn't bother him either, because it was heavy ground. It would be a good performance, I think, to back up again, but I do think he is the most likely winner, Heltenham. I can see where you're coming from with Solo. You probably wouldn't want the ground too testing. There could be a little bit of rain around over the next couple of days, but his form definitely makes him a good candidate. He finished second as well at Exeter on his seasonal return behind Elixir de Nuts, who's had a lot of good form this season. Won at Newbury, won the Grade 1 Clarence House. Plenty of good form in the book for him this season. I don't think that was a bad run at all. So, Solo back in these kind of waters with Freddie Gingell taking off some weight, taking off his £5. I do think that could serve them well. So Solo could be a viable alternative to take on the favourite, but I'm just going to side with him. We then move on to the feature race on Newbury's card. It's the 3:15. It's the British EBF Bet Victor National Hunt Mares Novice Hurdle, a Grade 2, always a really competitive race. There's 17 runners going to post, and Party Vibes is your favourite at 5-1. We've then got El Elefante at 11-2, Lanchman Lass at 7, Smiling Getaway at 8, K Tara Tara 12s along with Linda Riley, and Bigger Are the Rest. Katie, again, this looks quite a good race, plenty of depth. Some informed mares, some improving mares as well. Is there anything you liked in here?
Again, not a huge fancy for me. A bit of a tricky race. The one that's a big price, I think, is Don't You Want Me for Craig Litster. Sean Bowen's riding. And I just think if you forgive her last run at Doncaster, she was in fairly decent form. She won at Carlisle, beat Luna Discovery, convincingly beat Drumley Spud, who's a shorter price than her here. And when she was trained by Fergal O'Brien, she won a maiden at Huntingdon. beating Little Miss Dante, who's a decent mare. And she finished third in a listed bumper at Sandown behind that one last and Casanamento. She wasn't too far behind, and she was actually ahead of a mare that you like in June Bell for Lucy Wadham, Chris, who was a very good third, or second actually, should I say, in the Cheltenham bumper at the November meeting behind Baby K. So I think looking at that form, to me, Don't You Want Me is a massive price at 40 to 1. So I could maybe play her each way in this and hope that she'll bounce back from a recent disappointment.
Yeah, interesting horse she is. The one I quite liked was K Tara Tara for Alan King. She ran against El Elefante last time at Ayr. Now, El Elefante did get the better of her by 2.5 lengths, but they were both racing off level weights that day, and now that they're pitching into a handicap, K Tara Tara is now £12 better off at the weight. So I do think that is interesting. And that was Sousa. It looked like that Alan King's had this race in mind for quite a few of these mares, probably, I've no doubt, been lined up for this. But I quite like her chances. She was a good bump horse last season, finished second behind the likes of Politicus, who ran well in the Aintree bumper. Her form this season over hurdles doesn't read too bad. I just thought, now coming into a handicap with the family that Alan King knows really well, I just thought 12 to 1. That could be a good each way bet there or not. I wouldn't be at all to see her run a good race. That was K Tara Tara for me in the 3:15 at Newbury. Now just going to look at one race, which is on ITV at Bangor on D. It's the Dragon Bet Best Odds Guaranteed Handicap Hurdle. Pick a number as your favourite, who goes for the hat-trick here for Ollie Murphy. We then got Jungle Jack next in at 7-2, Uncle Bert 4s, West of the Bridge 5s, Chilton 11s, Banjacks 12s, Landon Arbo Loud at 14s, and Williston 40 to 1 outsider. Katie, I know we were talking about a horse earlier, Williston. You thought he was maybe a little bit overpriced?
Yeah, I think he's a huge price at 40 to 1. He's on a mark of 130. Again, similar to the horse I just mentioned at Newbury, you've got to forgive his last run. But previously, he's shown some good form. He beat Bold Endeavour, Nicky Henderson's twice last year. The only snag with him is the soft ground that's expected. He hasn't really run on soft ground. He's run on yielding in Ireland and hasn't done that well on it. He did win on good to yielding, it's worth mentioning, but in really soft ground, he hasn't been seen on. But what I learned from Cheltenham last week, if anything, is the fact that some horses can really surprise you. You think that they need a certain type of ground and they can run well on ground that doesn't suit them. So I think, taking into account that the ground may not necessarily be to Williston's liking, it's a 40 to 1 chance. So possibly worth an each race out there. And if he hates the ground, then the 40 to 1 wasn't really expected to do much, was he? But I just feel if he copes with conditions, then he could definitely outrun those odds, because I think he's a much better horse than his price reflects. So he's just maybe one to keep an eye on at least.
Okay, well, so maybe one to just keep an eye on from Katie. Probably one of my strongest bets of the weekend runs in here, and that is West of the Bridge for the Skeltons. This horse now is starting to come quite well handicapped. He's now £1 below his last winning mark when he bolted up at Sandown last season by 19 lengths. On his day, I think he's definitely a high 130 horse, and I say on a lot of his form from last season, he's now really well handicapped. We last saw him finishing fourth at Newbury over 2 miles, and I just think he finds that trip a little bit on the sharp side these days. So stepping back up in trip over 2.5 miles at a course he's won at before. The form from last time doesn't look too bad. Brentford Hope scored last weekend, so there is some substance to it, and I just think about 5 to 1 he's really well handicapped, like I say, on some of his old form, and for me, I think he's got a very good chance for the Red Hot Skelton team. So yeah, he was the way I was thinking there. So before we sign off on this week's podcast, Katie, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
There's just one to keep an eye on at Navan in the 2:17, and that's Union Station for Gavin Cromwell. He finished third to Tully Hill on debut, finished third on his subsequent run as well at Naas. The drop back in trip on this occasion should suit. I think he's a half brother to OK Corral. I think he could be good enough to break his maiden tag here. The ground will be of no concern, so he's just one at Navan that I'm going to be interested in watching. And one other was, again, going back to Newbury, it's an old favourite of mine, and that's Fortitude. He's £8 below his last winning mark now. He finished second recently at the track. This is a swift reappearance, but he's had wind surgery since, and he's an advisor that I think could help him see out his races better. He's finished second twice this season. Maybe just hasn't been focusing on the task enough in the final stages, but still running well enough. I think this is a good opportunity for him to get his head back in front, and he's got Harry Cobden on board. So I'd love to see him get back to winning ways, and I'll be cheering him on Saturday.
So please remember to subscribe to us on all the major podcast platforms. We're available on Apple, SoundCloud and Spotify. Also remember to follow us on our YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media as well, on Twitter and Instagram. Please remember to gamble responsibly, and we'll be seeing you again soon.